Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about White Eagle Defiant Poland 1939, game from Hollandspiele. It's been out about 4 years now. This was designed by Ryan Hillman and Dave Shaw. It's a sequel or follow-up game to their first one in the series, Brave Little Belgium. I've got to be honest, one of my favourite games. Very asymmetric type game. It probably won't be everybody's cup of tea, but for me it's got some really clever mechanics, lovely components, and when I knew that a Poland 1939 game was being developed in the same series, it was a must-have for me. So I'm going to show you a little bit about the components, the map, the mechanics of how the game works, and then give you a little overview of my own experience in my second game last night with some of the guys at the club, and we'll wrap things up from there. But if you'd like me to do a video also on Brave Little Belgium, just let me know in the comments, and I can put that forward in due course. Enjoy the video. So what do you get in the box? What you get are counters. I've put these in this nice little hold-all box. You get these cylinders which are used as victory points. These different colours represent different armies. So in this case, as you can see here, you've got the German armies in the brown and the green. You've got the Russian Ukrainians in the reds, and the Polish armies in these blues, purples and gold colours. You've then got some appropriate markers used in the game. I'll show you a bit how those work in a moment. In addition to that, as I say, quite straightforward. You get a rule book. As you can see there, 7 pages. It's not complicated. Full colour. Really nicely set out as always. Any kind of Hollandspiele game. Very easy to follow rules. When we played our game last night, we probably just missed a couple of little things, but nothing that changed the outcome or impact of the game, which we thoroughly enjoyed. I'll cover a little bit more about that in a moment. And then you get a paper map, which I'm going to get out and show you. I have also got a canvas version, but it's a point-to-point system. So let's get the map out and show you what that looks like. Okay, as always with any Hollandspiele paper map, it's a very good thick stock paper. You'd probably put this under plexi. As you can see there, a nice colour palette being used, the reds and whites. This is your boxes where you will do combats. Deal with any recovery markers. Chits pulled from your pot. It's a chip pull system. You've got the turns along the top there, turn track, and different things that can happen at different times during those turns. And then you've got your victory points, which your cylinders will go on. And down the left hand side, you've got this Blitzkrieg breakdown, which is very important from the Polish perspective, but is very much luck driven really from that point of view. You can see you've got lots of boxes here. The ones that are of primary interest to both sides are these red circled ones. These are your victory point cities or locations. Some with the additional boxes are fortress towns and cities, still victory point areas, but perhaps that bit harder to occupy as far as the Germans and Russians are concerned. You've got the white line coming down here. This becomes particularly important on turn 5 when the Soviet entry into the game becomes possible. German units then have to, as soon as possible, move back over to the west, and Russian Ukrainian units cannot advance further across from the east than this line here. So If the Germans cannot get units back into their areas within a certain time scale, that again affects victory points, which is a bonus to the Polish. So the game will start ultimately with the Polish deployed in these sort of central areas of Poland itself. The German armies to the north and the south coming in en masse, attacking these areas. If the Germans can secure enough victory points by turn 5, stroke turn 6, the Russian-Ukrainian forces piled up on the border here will invade, and it becomes a very, very difficult situation for the Polish. It's unlikely in the game, although it is possible after turn 1 that the Polish can cross border. But as you can see, there's no victory point locations outside of Poland, so it's pretty unlikely they're going to leave their areas. The Polish by nature tend to be quite defensive. They can launch the odd counter-offensive, but they're always predominantly outnumbered. Again, I'll talk a bit about our game last night in a moment. Some quite interesting things happened in there. As you can see, it's very much an asymmetric type game. There is definitely an element of luck involved, but there are some very interesting dynamics within the game as well. But that's just to give you a bit of flavour from that point of view. I mentioned it is a chit pool system. These are just some of the key chits that will be coming out of the cup. So these chits here and here, so we've got Stuka, Armoured Train, and the PZL or P11 are event chits which can be used in that turn by the respective side. So these are Polish ones, this is a German one, and they give certain benefits to each side during that turn. They then go back in the cup at the end of the turn. This is a Polish activation marker for the North Army. This is a German activation for the Southern Army, and it's colour coded so you can see which pieces on the board are represented. The end turn markers are really important. If you get 4 of those come out of the cup, that is the end of the turn. So quite important from the Polish perspective, because if you get 4 of those out before both the German armies have been activated, there is a chance that you could progress this blitzkrieg breakdown marker. So basically the German player can reactivate units that haven't been used as yet. They have to roll a dice, and there's a chance of moving up that if they get the wrong result, which also limits then movement and combat for the army in that turn. If these get to 5 during the game, the Polish have won. The German forces have basically run out of steam and retreated back across the border. Likewise, if these victory point tracks here, if the Germans can get to 1 to 6 points by turn 5, I believe it is, the Russians-Ukrainians will enter. If not, they might not. Likewise, if they can get to 9 victory points by turn 8, they get a victory. And after that, it's a draw or a victory, depending on how many VPs they can get hold of. You get 1 VP for each red zone controlled, and you would take 1 victory point off the track here and add it on, so you know that that's occupied by the Axis powers. The recovery boxes down here allow you, when you take out a chit, so say I took out the German Southern armies, and I might have a unit here that has already been depleted. I've got other armies with the brown mark on the table. Maybe I don't want to move anything, and I think, well, actually I could spend the turn to recover 1 unit only in that army, so I could turn that over, recover it to full strength. I would flip over the recovery marker, and I can't use that anymore during the whole turn. So if I pull out the chit for the Northern Army later in the turn, I can't use that recovery. Same for the Polish as well. Quite an expensive commodity recovery. It's not going to be very often, particularly in the later turns, where you're going to be able to give up doing anything to recover 1 unit. But again, it gives you options in the game as a player in terms of what you want to do. Battles, very, very straightforward. Again, let's just show you. You have field battles and you have sieges. So if a unit goes into a square of an opposition unit, you would put them into, for example here, the primary areas like so, and you would fight out a battle. If you've got units converging from a different track to the same square, they can lend support and they will roll as well. Units all have some slight differences. So you have things like infantry, cavalry, light armour, armour and forts. This would be a general field battle. Polish cavalry, as you can see by the little horse, have special ability in that they can roll before anybody else, and if they cause damage, that affects the Germans before they can roll back. So that's quite useful. German panzer units, which you see here, are indicated with 2 dice, so they get to roll twice, and in this case they would need a 6. If they score a double, they get 2 hits. In this case, they'd have to get a double 6. Some of the units are 4s, for example, so a double 4, 5 or 6 would score 2 hits. So panzers are very, very powerful. Cavalry, Polish cavalry, not powerful as such because normally rolls are quite high, but they can be quite effective. All units except infantry move 4 a turn. Infantry move 2. So generally 1 point to 1 point is 1 movement, unless you're going along dotted lines, which cost double. And some of the event checks we talked about can affect or deplete movement. There's a particularly good one for the Polish called Sabotage, which can really impact the movement of Axis armies. So that's combat. Siege is slightly different. So if, for example, in this scenario we had a fort, the fort would roll 2 dice on defence, needing 5s. You can only damage the fort once you've taken out the other units in that area. And panzers have no special abilities. Cavalry have no special abilities against forts. So they would roll 1 dice, needing a 6. They would roll as normal, needing a 6, etc, etc. So forts, quite useful, particularly when you've got other units in there, can become quite difficult to eradicate without the German player incurring quite a lot of damage. So that's a brief overview of some of the key elements of the game. As I say, White Eagle Defiant is the second game, I would say, in this series. Brave Little Belgium being the first one. And again, if people would like me to do a little review on Brave Little Belgium, I'm more than happy to do that. I love that game. That's what made me buy this one. Plus, I'm particularly keen on the Polish 1939 campaign. But it's, as I say, this won't be for everybody. But it really, for me, scratches an itch in that it's a very easy game to learn. But it does have a lot of different strategies in the way you can play it. There's an element of luck, yes. Dice throwing always involves a bit of luck, but it does throw out some quite interesting results. And so I'd just like to talk a little bit about the game we played last night and how did that all work out? What was the outcome? How did it feel? How did it play? And then we'll wrap up at the end with my overall view on White Eagle Defiant. So, my views on White Eagle Defiant and the game we played last night. We set the game up. It very much was a one-trick pony for a lot of the game. The Germans came in from the north and the south, steamrolled the Polish in the early part of the game due to some very fortunate dice rolling by the German player. The Polish player was very unlucky. But what we found was that despite this, there was some attrition to the German armies, and as they come across the border they gradually start to filter out and spread out as they have to go and capture key locations. And because of the way the Polish armies are deployed, you've got a kind of north, south and centre. The centre army stayed fairly intact throughout most of the game. And this came to roost later in the game when the Russian and Ukrainians started to come in. A bit of a steamroller, and the Polish player started to get some very lucky rolls on the dice, put a lot of damage onto the Ukrainian and Russians and kind of stopped them really at the border. We got really to that turn 8, turn 9 critical point, and the Germans were 1 point of victory going into the turn where they needed 9. The Polish in the centre launched a couple of very critical counterattacks, and they were literally 1 hit away from capturing a key location back, which would have brought them back down from 9 to 8 victory points. The Germans just managed to hold it and get victory, but it went right to the wire and could have easily have been a draw for the Polish, despite that very much early steamroller from the Germans when it looked like it was going to be all over very, very quickly. So overall, my thoughts on the game. I think as the Polish player, there are probably some limitations to what you can do. You're on a hiding to nothing really throughout the whole game. You know the Germans are strong. You know you've got this Russian steamroller waiting to come from the east. There's very little you can do to prepare for that because you're so busy tied up trying to defend yourself against the Germans. And it gives you that real feeling of maybe how Poland felt in 1939, 1940. However, there are opportunities there to make some little counterattacks here and there, and if you time them in the right way, they can be quite effective. We had a very interesting situation down in the south later in the game where the Polish player had an army pretty mashed up, but was forced to retreat, and suddenly the German player realised that the only retreat for the Polish player was back into Polish territory, which actually then opened up 2 victory point areas which he'd left unguarded, which the Polish player quickly gobbled up due to a generous draw from the chit pool in terms of his forces being pulled out first. This suddenly threw the whole game into the balance. The German player was kind of thrown into a bit of a spin thinking, well, what do I do now? And that's why we got to a very close result at the end. So the Polish player has to really just hang in there and wait for those little opportunities to come along. And if they can hang in there and not get too overrun too soon, they do have a chance to pull off a victory of sorts at the end. So White Eagle Defiant for me was again another classic in the series. I think this style of game has so much scope. I immediately playing this for how great would this game be to do the Warsaw Uprising or something similar, where you could have the city divided up into districts. Stalingrad would be another one, and you could do a very similar theme with chit pool and various forces and events and things like that. But I really hope the designers Ryan Holman and Dave Shaw, who did both White Eagle Defiant and initially Brave Little Belgium, I really do hope they're able to publish some more games in this series. I hope Hollandspiele support them with that, because I think they're cracking little games. I've played Brave Little Belgium quite a few times. This was my second time playing White Eagle Defiant. You get a different result every time, a different format of game, so there's so many different ways you can play it and approach it. But for me, thumbs up. I really like them. Again, I appreciate maybe they might be a bit too isometric for some people, a little bit too random, but I think they do scratch that itch. If you want a game that plays in a couple of hours of an evening with some friends, a bit of strategy, but nothing too heavy on the grey cells, these are a really good game. And the production values, as always with Hollandspiele, a top drawer, lovely thick chunky counters, great maps and artwork. So one to put on your Christmas list if you're looking perhaps for something a little bit different to play. But I hope you've enjoyed this video. As I say, if you'd like me to do a bit more of a detailed look at Brave Little Belgium, be happy to post a video on that one in due course as well. But hope you're having a great weekend, getting some games in, and as always, appreciate any comments in the box as normal. And if first time watching, please subscribe as well. See you again soon.